All right, welcome back. We're doing another one of these videos where we check out a random monster from Monster Core and give it a little inspection, analysis, review, all of that stuff. I'm not doing it live this time, so we are back to me in the corner. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and spin up our creature, see what we get. Seraptis. Okay, so we're gonna check out the Seraptis. Give me just 1 second. So we have the Seraptis, an aliving demon. 4-armed Seraptis demons are radical nihilists at heart, despising other creatures out of bitter entitlement and laughing hysterically when others die or suffer. They arise from souls that engage in dedicated campaigns of misery, driving their victims toward despair and suicide. After their awakening as a Seraptis, the hungry mouths carved into their arms devour others' suffering, bringing a lively hue to the demon's cold skin. So, not the nicest of creatures by any means, but that's not surprising for a demon. These demons seek to drag mortals down to their level, luring pawns into deep-seated resentment, feeding their targets an unending stream of half-truths and propaganda. They often drive these mortals to vent their rage into unforgivable deeds against innocents. Although thrilled by the misery of their mortal pawns inflict, the demon's true comfort is to harvest the souls of those pawns as more of their kind. So they are a self-replicating demon. They go out of their way to make more demons of their kind, which isn't entirely unusual for demons. They tend to try and proffer their unique idea of sin into others, and which leads to those people potentially being sent to the abyss and becoming similar. Although it would seem that they more directly work in this according to their lore. Perhaps directly stealing the souls instead of allowing them to be judged. So, Seraptises, or Serapti perhaps, are level 15 creatures. They're quite strong. They're medium, demon, fiend, unholy. Nothing surprising there. And none of these have anything like really specific about them other than mostly information tags, and the fact that certain abilities will only work on unholy creatures or holy creatures. We have a perception of plus 25, dark vision, and true sight, which allows them automatic counteract checks against illusions, polymorphs, etc., just to see through them, not to actually counteract them. They speak Chthonian, which is what Abyssal is now, Draconic Emprian, which is what Celestial became, and they have telepathy to 100 feet, and true speech, so when they speak, everybody understands what they say, even if they don't share a language. They've got a 30 in acrobatics, 31 in athletics, which is coterminous with the fact that their strength is 1 point higher than their dex. They have a deception of 29, religion of 27, and stealth of 28. Strength of 8, dex of 7, con of 6, intelligence of 3, wisdom of 4, and charisma of 6. Pretty normal for such a high-level creature to have so many, like, chunky numbers there. Let's see. Perception was what, 25 at 15? That's slightly below moderate, so they're not the most perceptive. But they do have true sight, which is quite a boon to their abilities. They're very hard to trick with illusions, polymorphs, that sort of thing. That includes invisibility. And their skills. We're looking at high for acrobatics, so I believe we're looking at 7 as our base. So acrobatics is using a slightly higher than moderate value, but it's right on the money for high. Or no, it's not. I was looking at 16. Okay, so it's adjusted appropriately. Basically, it's using moderate modifiers with a higher, or it's using a high modifier with a little bump from being over moderate on its ability score. Or, oh, never mind. That was perception table, which is always different. Okay, so it's straight on high. But it's got a 1-point bump down according to its ability score. So that's interesting. But the athletics is in relation to that, so it's not all that unusual. It is only 1 point off. We got 29, 27, 28 on the rest, so that's ranging between moderate and high for their skills. Again, not too unusual. And we can go back to ability modifiers. So 8 is a high value, and they've got 1 point below that on Dex. Let's see here. They have an AC of 37, Fort of 27, Reflex of 28, and Will of 25. And they've got a blanket +1 saves versus magic, which can bump them up quite a bit. Let's take a look here. Armor class. Is it 25? No, 35. So they've actually got a pretty low AC. It's between low and moderate. And that's kind of unusual. We'll see if they make up for it somewhere else. They are a stealthy sort of creature, so maybe they've got a like sneak attack and extreme damage or something. And plus 25 is going to be between low and moderate. They'll have plus 28 and plus 27. So plus 28 is just below high. Plus 27 is just above moderate. So they're doing a lot of very mild adjustments off of center. And the weird thing is that they're pulling one instead of adding one with their dexterity. So that's a little strange to me. But they do still get this bonus here, which will actually bump them up for most things, where they go from moderate to, or slightly over moderate to slightly below high, and from slightly below high to high proper. And then the one that's in between, or one up to moderate proper. So let's look at their HP. 340 with rather accessible weaknesses at level 15 of Cold Iron and Holy, each of 15. So let's see. That's a pretty high weakness. And their HP is saddled firmly at high, at the bottom range of high. So they got a lot of HP, but fairly accessible weaknesses. I'd consider Holy half niche, because you might not have a champion or somebody that can deal regular Holy damage in the party, but Cold Iron by level 15 is pretty accessible. You've got needle darts, you've got spells that count as, or not spells that count as Cold Iron, but Cold Iron's very cheap. So especially if you know you're going to be fighting demons, Cold Iron's very easy to get a hold of, as most of them are weak to it. Blood Healing has an aura, healing vitality, range of 30 feet, or emanation of 30 feet, Whenever a humanoid within the aura takes bleed damage, the blood flows through the air into the Seraptis' mouths, and the Seraptis heals by the same amount. That's big, because that can be a lot of healing. So this is probably high HP and potential auto healing. I imagine they very easily apply bleed, so they're going to be constantly healing, just little bits at a time, but still constantly healing. Let's see. And recovery vulnerability. When a creature within the Seraptis' blood healing recovers from persistent damage, they take 3d6 mental. So there is a middle ground. There is a danger to them applying bleed. Interesting. Because that's significant. They need to at least hammer down 3 creatures and have them bleeding. And have them not stop bleeding to make this worth it. Got a speed of 40 and a fly of 40. So there's the sort of float through the air eerily and upsettingly fast kind of creature. But at 15th level, speeds of 40 are not crazy. So by that level, they won't seem all that fast, but just to anybody in general, like the people that they're manipulating, that's terrifying. You can't run from them, probably. You might be able to get away with running on horseback. They have a wounding scimitar, which is just a normal +1 striking wounding scimitar times 2. They've got 2 of them in their inventory. Plus 32 to hit. With, let's see, 7, 14, 17, plus 16. So 17, 33 average damage. Technically the D6 might do more than that, but let's see. To hit, what was it, 32? So they have an extreme to hit. Let's see where their damage lies. Just above high. So this is a very offensive creature. Makes sense why their AC is so low. They're going to constantly be healing, and they are going to absolutely shred. So this is definitely sort of a striker skirmisher type character. Claw 31, slightly lower, but still nearly extreme. Agile, magical, unholy. See, I don't understand why this is actually lower, because agile does not make... Oh, it's because of the +1. It's the +1 on the scimitars, which is why it's higher. So their claw is 2d4 plus 16 slashing plus 2d6 mental and grab. So grab is usually a bump down in damage. It's agile, that's usually a bump down in damage. So we're looking at 16 plus 5, 21 plus 7, 28 average damage. Which is a little below low and a little above moderate, closer to, or a little above low and a little lower than moderate, and it's closer to moderate, which is 30 average. So still pretty good damage, considering it gets grab in there. They have Caustic Blood 30, which is a ranged attack. Acid, Magical, Unholy, straight 7d6 acid, which 21, 24 average damage, which is low damage for them. And it's also slightly lower to hit, so I see a glaring issue though, unless it's somewhere down here, which it may be. There's no range mentioned no range increment or flat range, which is a mild problem with ranged attacks. And does 30 drop down? 30 does drop down to normal, high to hit. So far from its specialty, but still a possibility for it to use reasonably. Alright, so let's check out their spells. They've got 8th rank Dominate, Phantasmal Calamity, which deals a lot of mental damage, Wave of Despair, which matches with their severe depression themes, Translocate, which is very common in powerful fiends, once per day at 5th rank and at will at 4th rank, so they got short range teleports constantly, as much as they want. Illusory Disguise at will, so they can change their appearance at will. And they have True Sight and True Speed constant, which we already saw up top, but that is specifically that these are magical effects and not some sort of pseudo-natural effect. And we've got a 1st rank Ritual Demonic Pact, and this just means that that they can heighten this to their level, or to rank castable by their level, which would be 8. But the ritual itself is 1st rank. Bloody Dance, 2 actions. The Seraptis makes a strike with up to 4 arms, each against a different target, and using a claw or scimitar as appropriate. So they only have 2 scimitars, so only 2 scimitar attacks and 2 claw attacks. These attacks count towards the Seraptis' multiple attack penalty, but the multiple attack penalty doesn't increase until after all of the attacks. The Seraptis can use grab following this activity, separately attempting to grapple each creature hit by a claw. So they can, for 2 actions, make 4 strikes and 2 grabs. Or for 3 actions, make 4 strikes and 2 grabs. That's pretty impressive. That's a lot of action compression right there. Basically doubling their action efficiency. Gnawing Arm, which is unholy, and it requires them to have at least 1 creature grabbed or restrained. And the Seraptis' arm mouths gnaw on those creatures, dealing each of them 2d6 plus 8 piercing damage with a DC 37 basic fortitude save. Creatures that fail to save also take 2d6 persistent bleed damage, which is much closer to making this up here worth it. Isolating Words. The Seraptis telepathically explains a plausible secret to a creature within 30 feet. The creature must succeed a DC 37 will save. Let's check that. Will save. 15. 37 is slightly above high. Will save or be mentally cut off from those around them for 1 minute or permanently on a critical failure. The affected creature treats no one as an ally, and any speech they hear is warped, encouraging conflict. They negate any linguistic ability from creatures that aren't unholy, regardless of the results of the saving throw. The creature is immune to isolating words for 24 hours. This actually right here, negating any linguistic ability from creatures that aren't unholy, is an incredibly powerful double-edged sword. Obviously, this is an unholy creature, is probably working with unholy creatures, and it's not likely to be working with creatures that are not unholy, or at least aren't holy. So this can potentially be quite a buff. Not guaranteed, it's mostly bad. But I could see, this is a top level summon right here at 15th rank, or 15th level. So you could summon a Seraptis and be like, tell me lies. And if you just happen to be going up against a non-unholy enemy that has a very powerful linguistic ability, but it also makes you really paranoid, and you have to fail. But that is a potential very niche buff, but generally a debuff. And so they don't have a whole ton of stuff. They are a relatively straightforward creature. They have some push and pull with their bleed damage. They want to inflict as much bleed damage as possible, but that makes it risky for them because they will take a significant amount of damage if a creature that's too close by recovers from their bleed damage. So generally, I think what they want to do is inflict as much bleed as possible and then retreat using 4th rank translocate. So that way, those creatures are bleeding, but not necessarily within their aura. And then when they've sustained some damage, they'll keep those creatures in their aura and try to keep them bleeding so that they can heal from that. But it's a risk. It's definitely a risk. And they'll probably prefer gnawing arms to a normal strike. Although at extreme to hit, they're pretty likely to crit and double that to 2d6 anyway. Or rather to 1d6 times 2. So I don't think they're an overly complicated monster. I think that they're probably not one that you face multiples of. Not until you're a much higher level than them, where they become minions for like a nascent demon lord or something. Or an incredibly powerful like level 20 creature or 20 plus creature. And then I could see you fighting several of them, but especially when they're on level or above level, I think you deal with one of these at a time because they're fast, they hit really, really hard. They're easy to hit. They don't avoid damage so well. And even their saves are kind of meh, except their reflex. But they do get a little boost from all saves versus magic. They have a couple of weaknesses, which helps mitigate the fact that they have high hit points, and also the fact that they take 3d6 damage if you recover from bleed damage within their aura, which means that it's also possible to deal small amounts of bleed damage to yourself and be fine, like, and damage this creature. So I forget if Blood Vendetta still makes you bleed for one. Blood Vendetta. Okay, it doesn't make you bleed. But if you have an ability where you make yourself bleed for like 1 point of damage, this could be quite useful to use against this creature by staying close to it. You take a very minimal amount of damage and they potentially take 3d6 when you recover. This is also going to encourage healers to actively try to stop the bleeding before it procs. Because you go in, you go, oh no, you're bleeding, let me stop it, and then this thing takes damage. So it's very much a creature that can be broken down quickly through a good bit of strategy and active work from healers. It's also not immune to bleed itself, which I think is interesting. Because it's not when another creature, it's when a creature. So if it starts bleeding and it recovers, it's possible that it also takes damage. But this only works on humanoids, so it can't heal off its own blood. Now, there is an argument that this doesn't work that way either, because auras are emanations. Emanations, the creator can decide whether or not they're affected by an emanation. So it is arguable that within the Seraptis' blood healing aura does not count it. But it's not ultra clear because it doesn't put that up here. This is a separate ability and it says within the aura, but it doesn't say excluded, anything about the exclusion. So that's just an interesting way that it can be interpreted. Personally, I'd go for it, but that's just me. So straightforward. I like the fact that it focuses on bleed, so it bakes in its own weakness. There are some demons that don't bake in their own weaknesses as much. This one goes pretty hard into it. I think very similarly to Succubus, which leans into its rejection vulnerability. So overall, a good creature. I don't think it's overtuned. It would definitely be an insanely dangerous fight for, say, like if this was a +3 or +4 creature for the party, just because it's going to be hitting, and it's going to be hitting hard. But its AC is very accessible even at that level. So this is a fight of extreme and swift violence, basically. Who can beat down who faster? I think their main tactic, like I said before, would probably be get in, make as many people bleed as possible, and then get out and stay at a decent clip. I will say it's unfortunate that they don't list a range here on Caustic Blood. Generally, when that happens, I kind of default to the 30-foot flat range. And this is at low damage, and actually, or it's at low average damage, but I believe its ceiling is a bit higher, but its floor is much lower because there's no flat addition or subtraction. So having no clear option, I'd either do 30 feet flat, or maybe 10 feet range increments, or 20 feet range increments. Bloody Dance is one of the best action compressions I've seen outside of like the Hecatonchery and like things that have like a ton of tentacles. So this is effectively either 4 actions for 2 or 6 actions for 3, as the grab can be affected by it. And that's just really, really good. And in theory, it can actually grab up to 4 creatures if it puts away its scimitars. So that potentially makes this 3 actions for 8 if it forgoes its actual weapons, which would be a bit of a detriment. A little less to hit, significantly less damage, and no bleed. But in that, they could choose to use Gnawing Arms and deal a significant amount of bleed damage very quickly. And then once again, retreat using Translocate. So I think it's got options. I think that it could have used a mild bit of extra oversight, but I have to admit, I've done this. I've made a ranged attack and forgot to put a range on it. So the designer probably had an amount in mind and just forgot to add it in. It happens. But yeah, thank you for coming to this video. Please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And I will see you next time. Peace.